Good afternoon, our guests, teachers, and fellow students. I feel privileged to extend my warm welcome to all present here for the webinar Chemistry of Warfare. This is an academic program organized by the Department of History and Chemistry. We will begin our program with a short address by the head of the History Department, Ms. Swarupa Kamath.
Thank you so much. I would like to say that this opportunity has been created by the faculty of the chemistry department. It is they who took the initiative to reach out to the history department, and that is how this webinar has been organized. We have had a wonderful time collaborating with each other in preparing for this. And the purpose of this is to remind everybody that while, as far as our formal institutions are concerned, we tend to be very compartmentalized. Knowledge is something that knows no boundary. So while we say this is chemistry and that is history, the truth is that both are interconnected. The World War would not have fought or dragged on for so long had it not been for the application of science in the field of protecting, defending a country. And we have seen how the application of scientific knowledge brings about a transformation in lives of everybody. It may be something that was fairly obvious to begin with, but it may also be something that is realized only in hindsight. So while World War is part of the syllabus of the history department, the technological aspect is something that we do not really give too much attention to, which I think is unfortunate. And I hope this would be a way of filling up this gap of information we have with regard to science, and in this case, specifically with regard to chemistry and its application during the wars. So thank you once again to each and every one of you who have found the time to come for this talk. And I now hand over to the students. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Swarupa ma'am. Now, I would like to call upon Ruhina to introduce our guest speaker to the audience.
Dr. Prabodh Chaubey graduated from IIT Bombay. He has a doctoral degree in organometallic chemistry from State University of New York. He has worked with BASF, world's largest and most admired multinational chemical company, for more than 25 years. Worked as Senior General Manager and Head of BASF Research and Development Center. Retired on January 2014. For a short time, worked with Nehru Science Center as Chief Mentor in their Innovation Hub for spreading innovation culture. Out of love to improve the quality of education, accepted an invitation and worked as the regional director of a very large university for 39 months. Tried to bring in the best qualities of world's top multinational corporations in this university. Tried his best to improve the quality of education, administration, and colleges. For 2 years, taught at State University of New York, USA. Has worked on an advisory committee to start a new chemical engineering college in Gujarat. External referee for numerous PhD, MTech, and MSc theses. Personal achievements. In February 2013, Government of Maharashtra felicitated him with Utkrishta Vakmay Nirmiti Puraskar, a state award of Rs 50,000 from Chief Minister of Maharashtra for excellent contribution to Marathi literature. In 1971, Mr. V.V. Giri, the then President of India, felicitated him with President's Scout Medal and certificate at Rashtrapati Bhavan, New Delhi. Takes keen interest in vocal music and has won 14 prestigious first prizes in vocal music competitions at Mumbai or state level. Keen interest in swimming and rowing. Research activities. He has worked in the fields of organometallic chemistry, organic synthesis, adhesives, natural products, ionic liquids, plastics, etc. His major achievement was total development of a stereoisomeric insecticide starting from lab till construction of manufacturing plant and exports of product. Another major achievement was a novel herbicide formulation, awarded Innovation Award for the same.
Thank you, Gina, for introducing Dr. Prabodh Choube to us. And thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation. And we feel honored to have you with us this afternoon. Before we proceed with the webinar, I'd like to inform my dear participants that if you have any questions or any clarifications needed, feel free to type it in the chat box during the talk. If your queries will be addressed at the end of the talk. Now, I'd like to call upon Dr. Prabodh Choube to enlighten us on the topic chemistry of warfare.
Sir, you're muted. Sir, you're muted.
Okay, now I'm audible, I goes. Thank you, Shruti, for the warm introduction. And thank you, Sophia College, all the faculty members and students, and especially Professor Prabha Shetty and Professor Swarupa Kamath for inviting me for today's lecture, which is quite a different topic from my normal lectures, which I deliver about science and chemistry and innovation and out of the box thinking and safety and career guidance, etc. I think this was a very interesting topic. I liked it and I thank you very much. I think my connection with Sophia College goes back to past 20 years or so, and I was invited almost, I think, every year or maybe 6 months also sometimes to interact with your students and faculty members, and it was a very nice experience throughout in the last 20 years or so. Even after this corona pandemic, I think we met once or twice online last year. But today's, I think, occasion is very special. Today's topic is very special. For me also, it was very interesting and challenging, and especially to keep both departments engaged, history as well as chemistry, is, I think, a tough challenge for me. I hope that I will be successful in doing so. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to go into the deep of chemistry. Like, I'm not going to give you some chemical reactions or anything. I want to make it very interesting talk so that even whatever chemistry I'm talking, the history department should understand. And I'm not going to go into the years when somebody was born or when somebody was sitting on the throne, etc. So that the chemistry department should not feel bored. I'm trying my best to balance my talk so that both departments find it interesting. Let us see. I'm sure by the end of the talk, you will realize that at least we have tried to bridge between the history and chemistry. And when I'm saying chemistry, you can't really take out chemistry, isolate chemistry from the rest of the science. So I'm going to give you some examples from the general science field also, which includes physics, biology, etc., but mainly chemistry. Okay, let me start with my presentation. Give me a second till I connect my presentation. Okay, am I visible? I mean, this presentation is visible to all of you, I guess so. Is it so?
Yes, sir. Yes,
is
sir.
my presentation visible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. So, I have taken a little liberty to modify the topic. Yes, the topic is same, chemistry of warfare, but the way I have titled it, what science gained out of historical wars, because that will be my main focus in today's talk. Yes, wars are not for gaining something. I know that wars are really, really. I mean, wars should not happen. Wars is not something welcome thing. However, if you look at the history of wars, humankind has always gained something out of each war. And let us look at only the positive side of the war today, what we gained out of historical wars in terms of science. And my last example, at the end of my talk, I'm also going to talk about humanity, what humanity gained from historical wars. So let me start with this. In case there is some failure of Wi-Fi or something, please have patience. Within a couple of minutes, I'll reconnect. It generally does not happen, but I always, last 1 year or so, I have a habit to warn people that it may happen. Technology is something. Okay, need is the mother of innovations. I think we have heard this many times. And really, if you look at the history of wars, you will realize that need is the mother of innovations. Many day-to-day things that have become part of our daily life were innovated and brought to reality only because of wars. When I show you various, when I tell you about a number of things around us, you'll be surprised that, oh, was this invented because of war? Even many of you may not be aware that our Wi-Fi, the origin goes back to war. Internet was started as ARPANET, then in America when two computers were connected together because they were afraid that if there is a bombing at one particular site, the computer will get destroyed and the entire information, military information in that computer will be destroyed. So the first attempt of internet in US was to connect two computers far away from each other by wire. Slowly it became a wireless thing and two became four, eight, and now you know it is impossible to count how many computers are connected to each other. So all these things, innovations started because of fear of war or because of military interests. Wars certainly have negativity and should be avoided. But if wars were not there, many innovations would have come much later. I'll show you this in the examples when I tell you. If certain innovations were not there, wars might have ended in a different manner. Maybe the other party would have won, or time span would have been changed, or more casualties would have resulted. We don't know. So it is really a good thought to study if certain innovations were not there. Forget about innovations. Right now we are going through a very dark period of corona pandemic. Let me tell you, 100 years, exactly 100 years back, 1918 till 1920, there was a worse pandemic, worse than corona. The virus was of the similar nature like our today's coronavirus. And that particular pandemic was called as Spanish flu pandemic. Actually, that is a misnomer. Why it happened is due to First World War, there were a lot of restrictions on media and press. So many countries didn't know that there is a pandemic going on. They all thought it is all localized. Every country thought it is a localized some kind of flu, a different kind of flu. And people didn't know the worldwide effect of Spanish flu. Only Spain was not involved in that war. If you know the history of Spain, Spain was not involved to the extent other countries were involved in the First World War. And in Spain, the press was quite free. They used to publish that there are so many casualties, so many deaths in Spain because of this flu pandemic. And people thought it's only a Spanish flu. And that's why the name Spanish flu has come. But actually, it was worldwide and it was worse than today's corona. And it lasted for 3 years. It also had three peaks: 1918, 1919, and 1920. And finally, it disappeared on its own. I'm sure today's corona will also disappear very soon. So let me come back to the wars. Wars certainly advanced science and chemistry. War-related innovations had a major impact on our life during peace times also, because whatever innovations were there during wartime, they continued, and humankind grew. There was a progress in our human race. Human race has definitely advanced due to wartime innovations. Now I'm just listing this slide. I'm not going to go into the details. I'm just going to list directly combat related non-chemistry innovations. For example, pressurized cabins in aeroplanes. We all sit in aeroplanes and go from one country to another country. We don't even realize that long back, the aeroplanes were like open, like your open car. When you go in a car with the windows open, aeroplanes were like that. If the aeroplanes go to a certain height, people used to feel very cold, lot of breeze, and it was impossible you can take the aeroplane beyond a certain height. And this change took place because the pressurized cabins were developed as a need for warfare. Radar was definitely because of need in war. Secret code breaking electronic machine, which ultimately led to some kind of computers, then machine guns, submarines, aerial combat technique, tanks, guided torpedoes, laser guided ground to air bombs, laser guided air to air bombs, surface to air missiles, intercontinental ballistic cruise missiles. There's a big list. When I was discussing with my son, who was an alumni of your college in the Haft, he gave me a big list. He told me, Papa, there is a list. I can give you some 40 things which were because of wars. I said, no, I think this is more than enough. Then non-chemistry, there are many other innovations. We all know spring. We never realized that spring was developed because of need in a war. Digital photography, which we are so familiar. Today, we just take out our mobile and take a photograph. The beginning of this digital photography was because of war. Internet, I already told you. Daylight saving clock adjustment to save energy. Even soya sausages were invented because of war, because it was not possible to preserve non-veg sausages for longer time at the war front. So people developed soya sausages, which was mainly based on soya, which is a protein source, then tomato, etc. in it. Then progress in communication with aeroplane pilot. In the beginning, if I tell you the history, you will laugh. How pilots used to communicate. They used to have paper and pen or pencil. They used to write and drop that paper on the ground. And there used to be some boys kept in the field underneath. They will run, pick up the paper and pass on the message on the ground, because there was no communication system which should communicate at the height. Then night vision camera, airdrop technique, Morse code, signaling system, all this thing was developed because of wars. Now I'm coming to the first major innovation in chemistry field, which was developed because of war. That is ammonia. Ammonia is considered as the most important innovation of last millennium. There was in year 1999, many scientists all over the world came together to find out which was the most important innovation of last millennium, and they unanimously came out with the name ammonia. Ammonia, how it was developed, why it was developed? Just because of First World War. Gunpowder and bombs required nitro compounds. Those of you who are chemistry students, they know nitro compounds. Now, nitro compounds are found in nature as potassium nitrate or sodium nitrate. Sodium nitrate is known as chili saltpeter. The common name for sodium nitrate is chili saltpeter. And there are mines of this chili saltpeter or sodium nitrate in country Chile in South America. You can see in the map, small country in South America at the southern part. Chile was under US and British control during World War I. So American and British had no worry about raw material for gunpowder, bombs, etc. But Germans had no such access to natural nitrate. So they had a major problem when war started. How to win the war if we run out of nitrogen sources? How to make gunpowder? How to make bombs? Only way to synthesize nitrate in bulk was from nitrogen in air, which can be combined with hydrogen to give ammonia. So German scientists focused on ammonia synthesis process. Karlsruhe University professor Haber developed a laboratory process to make ammonia by combining hydrogen and nitrogen gases. It looks very simple, hydrogen plus nitrogen, but it is not at all simple. These two gases, hydrogen, as you know, is a very dangerous gas. It can explode, it can catch fire, and have to be combined at very, very high pressure and temperature. And there were many explosions in trying to do this. And Haber was finally successful, but his methodology could produce only 1 cup of ammonia per hour. Now, can you imagine just 1 cup of ammonia production per hour? Can you make any gunpowder or bombs? Impossible. Germans were desperate to win the war. So they decided to scale up the technology. They gave that problem to a company known as IG Farben. And IG Farben company scientist, the chief scientist who had developed the company was Mr. Bosch. The lab process for ammonia was scaled up by Mr. Bosch, and due to pressing needs of war, he, on war footing, literally war footing, he scaled up to produce several tons of ammonia in manufacturing plant. The challenge was accepted by him, and he could make ammonia in manufacturing plant at several
That's
tons.
why so I'll close the TV.
Now, challenges while scaling up ammonia process were tremendous. Now, in this photograph, you see a column, which was the first column used to make ammonia, because you cannot make several tons of a chemical in just a vessel in a reactor, mix hydrogen, mix ammonia, stir it and make ammonia. That will not be possible. That's too tedious and too slow process. So it had to be done in a very continuous manner. At one end of this column, very long, you can see it is taller than a building, 5-story building. This is the building of a Karlsruhe University. Exactly same column is kept in front of Mr. Bosch's laboratory in the BASF company in Ludwigshafen, Germany. And this column was first used to make ammonia. So from one end, he fed nitrogen and hydrogen gas. From another end, of course, the pressure and heat was applied in the column. And from another end, ammonia gas came out. So it was a continuous flow of ammonia. And he was able to make ammonia in the desired tonnage that was required for the war. So this huge column, the first column was taller than the building, and the next subsequent manufacturing columns were much, much taller than this, made up of solid iron, special iron which won't get corroded. Today, 175 million tons of ammonia is produced in the world per annum. Can you imagine a wartime history, a wartime innovation is now converted into a daily manufacturing process, 175 million tons per annum. And important thing is 88% of it is converted into fertilizers. If ammonia was not there, no fertilizers. No fertilizers, that means no increase in food production. No increase in food production means impossible to feed 7 billion people in the world. Today, world is surviving because of ammonia production. If ammonia synthesis process was not there, half of the world would have died of hunger. So, yes, First World War was definitely bad. War should not be there. But there was an indirect advantage that Germans developed ammonia synthesis process. Today, because of that process, world is not hungry. Whatever hunger is there in the world, that is political. Just because we are not able to transport food from one place to another, there are hungers and famines. But otherwise, today we have sufficient amount of food grains in the world. Ammonia was nominated as the most important invention for this reason, and Haber and Bosch, both of them got a Nobel Prize in 1918 for this invention. So this is how war could help humanity and human being are not dying because of hunger. So this was the first example I gave you about the chemistry of warfare. But I want to stress about another thing. See, we as students, we always think, yes, now I'm getting my degree. After I get my degree, I should get a good job. After a good job, I should get good salary. I should prosper. But that is the ultimate aim we have. What about humanity? Are we worried about how human we are? Robert Bosch was a very successful businessman. He founded the chemical industry that became world's largest industry. Very brilliant person, got a Nobel Prize. He did the manufacturing process of ammonia that changed the world. This invention was named as the topmost invention. Today, millions of people are not suffering of hunger. But Bosch was miserable in his mind because his ammonia synthesis process was used to make gunpowder and bombs. So he was eaten from inside. His mind was always worried, sad, very sad feeling he had. He turned alcoholic and depressed and committed suicide, died a tragic death. Such a successful person committed suicide because human mind is not satisfied only with success and whatever accreditations you get or whatever fame you get, but inside your mind you feel guilty when because of your invention so many people are killed in the First World War. If ammonia was not there, probably the war would have ended immediately because Germans didn't have any stock of nitrates. So probably Germans would have surrendered much before 1918 when war was ended. So war could have ended in a year if Robert Bosch wouldn't have scaled up the ammonia process. That is on one hand. But had he lived for a few years to see the plus side of ammonia, he would have seen that world is not having hunger. World is free of hunger. Lot of food production because of ammonia. Unfortunately, Bosch committed suicide looking at the negative side of ammonia. So, as a student, what we should learn from this history is money is no problem, status is no problem, authority is no problem, power was there, freedom was there, flexibility was there. He was very close to political power center. But was his career successful? No. The very fact that he committed suicide, we can very well tell that in his mind, he was not successful. He realized that his invention was used to kill at least a lakh of people. So we should always remember this human side of every war. We can always boast about the technology, but the human side is very important, and that is very, very important from the history, the lesson what we should learn. So why Robert Bosch was unsuccessful? The guilt that he could not do anything good for society. Okay, no matter how much money you make, what prizes you get, Nobel Prize you get, how much company grows, if you get a feel that you could not do anything good for the society, your career is not successful. I think we should all remember this from the history. And this is why this is the importance of history. I am coming to a second chemistry related invention, which was because of war. We all know polyethylene plastic. I think we use plastic bags in spite of a ban, etc., etc. By the way, I'm not this is nothing to do with the wars or anything, but those of you who are under impression that plastic is bad, I think something is missing. You are not understood the plastic completely. Scientists are determined to change the world. Scientists have found out a solution in large scale in many companies, many countries. They are making biodegradable plastic, which degrades, and there is nothing wrong with biodegradable plastic. Slowly and slowly, it is coming to India also. To many countries, it is coming. So this is just a footnote from my side. Those of you who feel that plastic is bad. Now I'm coming to the polyethylene, which is, your common usage of polyethylene, whatever bags you carry, the shopping bags or whatever carry bags you carry. In 1894, Peckman was a scientist who accidentally found this as a sticky impurity formed in one of his reactions. He was doing some reaction, and at the bottom of a flask, he found something very sticky. He thought it was a useless substance, so he threw it away. Initially, it was thought so because it was a polymer connecting several methylene units. That's what he thought. And he named it as polymethylene. I have shown you at the left hand side corner, the first picture is methylene. If you connect many methylenes, hundreds and thousands of methylene together like a goods train, it forms polymethylene. But then scientists realized whatever he got in his reaction flask was not polymethylene because methylene does not exist in the world. It is very unstable. What he got in the flask was polyethylene, the center picture at the bottom in blue color. And that polyethylene, many ethylene connected together gives polyethylene from which you get the plastic bags, etc. Later, it was established that it was formed by connecting many ethylene units, so he renamed it as polyethylene. And on the right hand side, the third picture, what you see are the grains of polyethylene as it is produced in any factory. Then it is processed to give bags or other toys or whatever you get out of plastic. So, this is how polyethylene came into this world. That had nothing to do with war. But once the war started, during Second World War, British wanted a substance for coating radar cables. Tried everything, but this sticky substance, what Peckman had found at the bottom of his flask, was the best substance for radar cable coating. They also found that the most useful for coating under the sea transatlantic telephone cable during World War II, this sticky substance was the most useful substance and no other substance could take its place. So this substance was produced on large scale by heating ethylene glass at very high temperature and very high pressure because Second World War required this substance desperately because British and Americans wanted to communicate with each other using the under the sea cable and to coat that cable to avoid corrosion, etc., to avoid breaking. They wanted to coat it with something which is very inert and a very stable substance. So these two uses of radar cable coating and undersea telephone cable coating gave advantage to British and Americans in the war over Germans. Due to war urgency, it was made in spite of very high temperatures and pressures. But it was impossible to make it again and again. After war, they didn't find war. There is nobody looks at the economy of it. But after war, scientists started thinking, oh, such a magic substance. Why can't we make it economical? And then there were two scientists, Ziegler and Natta. Natta was from Italy. In 1953, they invented a process at a reasonably low temperature and pressure to make this substance polyethylene because they tried a catalyst. So polyethylene, polypropylene and many other plastics were very attractive substances and they could make practically anything at nominal cost. So the Ziegler-Natta catalyst became a very important catalyst to make many plastics and Ziegler and Natta, both of them got Nobel Prize in chemistry. Today, 80 billion kilos of polyethylene is made in a year and almost same quantities of polypropylene. Many other plastics in similar quantities are made today. Today, 10 lakh polyethylene bags are made in the world per minute. In spite of plastic ban, 10 lakh polyethylene bags are made per minute. Because in many countries, there is no major ban on plastic because they recycle plastic religiously. They don't make very thin plastic as shown in this picture. They make only thick plastic bags, religiously collect it in separate garbage cans and recycle it and make something else out of it. So plastic is not really 100% ban. There is a ban to throw it in the sea. There is a ban to just dump it anywhere. But properly collecting and recycling is not banned. Unfortunately, in India, very few people very religiously do. Our municipalities are trying to do best. And I remember in 1980 when I was in United States, in New York State, they started this campaign and students were given the responsibility to segregate the waste, to propagate the waste segregation drive. And students did a fantastic job. Students in university are very enthusiastic. They did a fantastic job to teach everybody in the state that plastic, bottles, paper, wet garbage, things should be separated properly. And once they took initiative, within a year or so, everybody in New York State started segregating it properly. Unfortunately, in Mumbai, no such responsibility is given to students. I'm sure if students are given such responsibility, they will do a wonderful job in Mumbai. But still, we are progressing and we will do that. Another very important chemistry related invention, which from historic point of view we should remember, is penicillin and other antibiotics. Alexander Fleming is responsible for discovery of penicillin. One sometimes finds that what one is not looking for. This is what happened with Alexander Fleming. He was not doing any research on penicillin. In 1924, much before Second World War, Alexander Fleming was working on some bacteria. He had developed a bacterial colony in an open dish in the laboratory, and he went on leave for 2 weeks. After coming back, he observed that the colony had multiplied in the dish. However, from air, some 3 to 4 particles of a fungus had fallen in the dish. And he was surprised when he looked at the dish. Around these 3 4 fungus particles, there were no bacteria. The bacteria around this fungus particle had totally died. They had not multiplied around the fungus particles. He kept his current research aside because he believed that one sometimes finds what one is not looking for. Whatever he found was something more important. So whatever research was he working on, he shelved it and started working on this fungus. He developed the culture of that fungus, and he used this fungus to treat bacteria of anthrax, venereal diseases, pneumonia, meningitis, diphtheria, gangrene, etc. And surprisingly, every bacteria was killed by this fungus, magic fungus. And white blood cells in our blood were not at all killed. So this was something great. If we inject this fungus in our body, nothing will happen to white blood cells in our blood. Blood will be intact and all bacteria will get killed. Magic. And Alexander Fleming was so thrilled, he immediately published his discovery. But unfortunately, nobody took any interest in his discovery. They said, well, so what? There is some fungus which is killing bacteria. Nobody realized the potential of this fungus for almost 20 years, for almost 18 to 20 years. When World War II started, there were lakhs of soldiers coming to the camp wounded, and their legs or hands had to be amputated, and there was no medicine to cure the gangrene or to cure the bacterial diseases that were developed because of the open wounds, because of bullet wounds, because of the cut amputated arms and legs. There was no such medicine. And then Fleming started telling about his fungus. See, in 1924, I told about this fungus, and nobody had taken any cognizance of that fungus. By the way, on the top the picture, there is a braid, and on braid you see green colored fungus. That is penicillin, which is developed on a braid, stale braid, which is kept open in the air. So after the World War II started, thousands of soldiers were dying because of septic. They could have survived if their wounds were properly dressed with a medicine, but no such medicine existed. Then people realized the importance of Fleming's work. Then Britain and America started a wartime team. They initiated a 300 scientist team where one university and 3 companies were involved. And this 300 scientist team totally focused on how this life-saving fungus can be manufactured in large scale. Soon they found a method of fermentation on large scale, and the fungus was manufactured under the name penicillin. And it is believed that several lakh soldiers from Britain and US were saved due to this penicillin. And Germans, in addition to many other mistakes that they made, their one negative point was they didn't have this penicillin. And that was one of the reasons many German soldiers continued to die during Second World War out of wounds and out of gangrene developed in the wounds. And so almost a crore of common men injured in bombing were also saved because of penicillin. So without penicillin, probably World War II history would have turned the table in a totally different direction. Alexander Fleming got Nobel Prize in 1945, just after World War II, and the history could have turned if he had not developed and scaled up the penicillin technology. Probably many British and American soldiers would have died. Maybe the war would have ended. Maybe Germans would have won. We don't know what would the history be. But definitely penicillin was a turning point in the Second World War, one of the turning points. Now I'm coming to another chemical, that is nylon. You know, nylon name itself suggests two cities, NY for New York and LON for London. And they say, there is no official record anywhere, but people say that the nylon name is given because of New York and London because it was developed in two laboratories. This polyamide type polymer was invented by DuPont company in USA in 1939, just before the Second World War, or just after the Second World War started, but not for war, but it was developed as a scientific curiosity. And suddenly World War II had started, 1938 or so, and military found it most useful for making ropes and parachutes and backpacks and tires and military tents, etc. Before that, people used to use some natural ropes or natural fibers to make all these things, which were not as sturdy as nylon. You know, nylon ropes and whatever you use today, nylon tents, they are so sturdy, nothing can break it. So post-war, this nylon was considered as the most sturdy polymer fiber and it was used everywhere. The manufacturing of nylon was boosted because of war. If Second World War were not there, probably nylon wouldn't have taken off the way it is taken off during Second World War. And another thing that resulted, very interesting history, but sometimes there are some very interesting things in the history. Nylon was, ladies were responsible for propagation of nylon. The first product that was manufactured out of nylon, other than these war-related products, was stockings for ladies. You know, in Western countries in winter, ladies wear stockings, full leg stockings. And the stockings, before nylon stockings were introduced in the market, they used to have some cotton or some other material stockings, which were quite saggy and we used to become loose. And sometimes some of the stockings were not like with the having the grip, and they used to have some kind of strap which was very difficult to wear. So it was all sorts of negative things about other stockings. But nylon stockings, women like it so much that when there was a shortage of nylon stockings just around Second World War, women had riots to get these nylon stockings. In front of shops, they used to make riots to get nylon stockings. If you read the old newspapers around 1940s, early 40s, you will read in New York Times or Washington Post how many riots there were because of nylon stockings. There was a shortage of nylon stockings as all production was diverted for war purpose. Many shops selling stockings were broken and looted because women thought they may be containing some stockings. Women who could not buy nylon stockings felt so uneasy that they used to color their legs and thighs with rouge to imitate like stocking color. And another very interesting news I came across, that in one or two places, shop was looted or shop was broken, and the stockings were not stolen. So that became a news item. A shop was broken open, but no stockings were stolen. How come? So this was very funny, but yeah, I mean, the history is very interesting to read. But this nylon basically served the Second World War, and the Americans had a plus point because of nylon, because their military equipment was much sturdy compared to the Germans. But however, Germans also, they were not in chemistry, they were far ahead of others. So they also immediately came out with uh, the American nylon was called as nylon 66. Germans came out with nylon 6, which was from a different raw material, and they also came out with equally sturdy nylon. So it was both cases win-win situation. But world got a very stable cloth known as nylon, nylon shirts, nylon blouses, etc. Nylon is, even today, it is very popular. Now I'm coming to another very interesting discovery, that is X-rays. We all are familiar with X-rays. When there is a bone broken, immediately we go to radiologist and have our X-ray taken. The history of X-ray is very interesting. Röntgen, a German physicist, was passing very high voltage of electricity through a glass tube under vacuum. Suddenly, the entire room was illuminated with yellowish green luminescence light. Röntgen knew this will happen because few years back, a British scientist, a physicist named William Crookes, I think there is a spelling mistake, a William Crookes, he was a British physicist, carried out the same experiment, and he too got same strange light all over the room. And he believed that such strange light has come, that means ghosts have come in the room. And he published that I have proved that ghosts exist. When you pass high voltage electricity through a vacuum tube, then there is a light, and that shows the presence of ghosts. What a scientific proof. But Röntgen was a real scientist. He did not believe in ghosts. But when he turned around in these first experiments, when the light was there, he just turned around to see what was there. And my God, he almost screamed. On the wall behind him, he had his bony skeleton projected on the wall. My God, nobody had seen such thing in the past. But he was a scientist. He knew this is not my ghost. This must be some scientific phenomenon. He studied almost from 7th of November 1895 to 25th December 1895. For almost 7 weeks, he stayed in his laboratory, tried various experiments, and finally proved that whatever he has found is known as, there are some different rays. He named them as X-rays. That means no name. People started calling them Röntgen rays. He politely said, no, don't give my name. These are X-rays. And that remained the name even today. His wife came to his room to see what experiment he was doing. She kept her hand in front of the glass tube. And my God, she screamed. Can you see the first picture on the top? That is the first X-ray in the world. His wife's palm. She kept her palm, and only the bones picture came. The flesh was not visible, and only her ring is visible because it was a metallic ring. She screamed. She came out saying, I saw my ghost. I saw my ghost. My God, save me. But Röntgen told her, my dear wife, it is not your ghost. These are some new X-rays which I have discovered. Later on, Röntgen did many things on that. And it was the most important discovery for wars. That time, British Army was fighting in Nile area, 1896 March. And Röntgen discovered these X-rays in December 1895. Within 3 months, British Army found that Röntgen's discovery is useful because of this discovery, one can find out where the bullet is lying in the body. So Röntgen on urgent basis made two portable X-ray machines. world's first portable X-ray machines made within 3 months of the discovery. And he dispatched those machines to Nile area. And doctors in British Army could immediately take X-ray of the wounded army people and find out where the bullet is. So the operations became very easy. Surgery was easy without much blood loss. They were able to remove the bullets. And this saved thousands of lives in war. Later on also, even till today, whenever there is war, whenever there is any problem where some metallic object is going inside our body, X-rays can find out where the metal is lying. Longin got the Nobel Prize in 1901 for this discovery. Today, X-ray is used extensively even for chemistry purpose. In chemistry, there is a technique known as crystallography. It is a separate branch of chemistry known as X-ray crystallography. You can determine structure of many complex molecules. It is very difficult to determine structure of very, very complex molecules having thousands or lakhs of carbon atoms. Like for example, DNA, many proteins, hemoglobin. In fact, the DNA structure was determined by the scientists Watson and Crick because they could take X-ray of DNA. So they realized the DNA has a double helix structure. Even the structure of penicillin was determined. Today also many complex molecules, students regularly take X-ray of the crystals and determine the structure. Today biotechnology is advanced just because of DNA structure, which was possible only because of X-ray. So wartime discovery, how useful it is in chemistry and for mankind, and also in the wars to save thousands of lives. This is what we learn from the history of wars. Now let us see what is the contribution of chemical warfare to chemistry. We all know chemical weapons, but during First World War and Second World War, many deadly chemical weapons were invented. Very first chemical weapon was chlorine gas by Germans during First World War. I have visited that site when I was in Brussels in Belgium. There is one war field where this deadly war was fought. Germans had invented a chlorine mask also. So the soldiers who were, instead of opening fire on the enemies, they were opening chlorine cylinders and they were wearing the mask. So nothing happened to them. But in the war field, there were thousands of British and other soldiers. They instantaneously died because of chlorine gas. They turned green, they turned blue-green, and within minutes they died. Humankind developed many other deadly chemical weapons like phosgene, mustard gas, hydrogen sulfide, acrolein, hydrogen cyanide, chloropicrin, dichloromethyl ether, N-ethyl carbazole, diphenyl chloracine, and also many lacrimatory chemicals were invented. You know what is lacrimetry? Lacrimetry is something which causes you to cry, tears. Your eyes cannot sustain to these chemicals. In tear gas, the police, when they want to disperse the mob during riots, they use tear gas. So xylyl bromide, benzyl bromide, chloromethyl chloroformate, trichloromethyl chloroformate, ethyl iodoacetate, bromacetone, all these very lacrimatory chemicals were also developed because of war. Wars ended, but the synthetic processes which were used to make these chemicals were very useful in taking chemistry further. Chemistry really developed because chemists synthesized these chemicals. Also, these chemicals are also used for making many medicinal molecules and pesticides. So the chemicals which were meant for chemical warfare actually turned out to be boon for mankind by developing medicines and pesticides. So this is what we learn from the history of warfare. Coming to very interesting innovation, that is tea bags. We know we make dip tea using tea bags technology. Tea bags were specially made for war usage because in the war field you can't have tea powder and make a tea. This is lot slimy process, and somebody thought that why don't have tea powder in a bag and just dip and throw the bag. This was instantaneously useful at the war field. So tea bags were first introduced at the war field, But today, this technology of tea bags, instead of tea in a bag, in many chemical companies and pharmaceutical companies, hazardous chemicals are kept in a bag of different sizes, and these bags are inserted in the reactors. So if the reaction is going very vigorously, they just remove the bags. Suppose if you add some solid or liquid chemical inside a reactor, there is no way to take it out. But chemical in a tea bag can be taken out immediately if you feel the reaction is going very violently. So this technology is used in pharma industry. For example, chemicals like lithium aluminum chloride, the chemistry students will know this chemical. This is used for reduction, and this chemical is very reactive. So the technology that is used in pharma industry is keep it in a bag of special material which is sort of semi-porous. So solvent can go through the bag, and the chemistry can take place, but the chemical will not go in the reactor. So you can take out the bag immediately. Another very interesting chemical innovation because of war was super absorbent. We don't know the chemical as super absorbent. The chemistry student may know the chemical as polyacrylic acid derivative or polyacrylic acid, to be simple. Polyacrylic acid of different molecular weight can be used to absorb water. In the war, it was realized that there are many casualties due to bombing and also actually bullet wounds, where the wounds have to heal quickly. And in order to heal the wounds quickly, the wound has to be made dry. How to make it dry? And this challenge was taken by scientists, and they developed polyacrylates of higher molecular weight. And these polyacrylates have a very high water retention property. A typical super absorbent can suck water equal to 100 times its weight. That means if you add one pinch of super absorbent in 100 ml water, about 1 gram of super absorbent in 100 ml water, entire water will get absorbed and water will disappear. So much is the power of the super absorbent. And after the war, the super absorbent property was like a magic. Many companies started use of this. In the war, Germans were benefited because of super absorbent. German soldiers, the wounds could heal quickly because they had developed super absorbent, and they used to apply super absorbent on their soldiers' wounds or after bombing on the civilians' wounds, and it healed the wound, it dried the wounds quickly. But after the war, the chemical found variety of uses. Like for example, the most widely spread use is sanitary napkins, what the ladies use, diapers for children as well as old people, for farming in water scarce desert regions. I know in many desert regions, including Rajasthan, they are doing farming because you just sprinkle some water and you need not spare the water. The rain may be too scarce, but the rainwater is retained in the soil because of the super absorbent, and it is sufficient for the produce to be produced. Then mobile artificial cricket pitch. When I went to Australia, I saw the Melbourne Cricket Club, MCC, and they, as well as many other cricket pitches all over the world, they have portable cricket pitch, which can be lifted, can be folded, can be kept elsewhere, and they use such cricket super absorbent to grow grass on the pitch. Then even our day-to-day, you must have seen on the footpath side, there are some merchants selling water crystals, which are for household plants in pots. Suppose if you are going out of your house for 2 weeks, going out of the town, then you can keep some crystals of the super absorbent in your household plant pots, and the plants will remain green, and because they are getting water from these crystals. So super absorbent, a wartime innovation, is now useful for many uses, right from your sanitary napkin to household plants. Now I'm coming to adhesive tape. Earlier, gym sorry, I think it's a spelling mistake. Gum and lac were used for packing parcels at war front. This was not very easy because one had to apply gum, melt the wax, melt the lac, which is a red colored excretion of some insects, and then apply it to seal the parcels. So something was needed to seal the parcels and send it quickly, because in wartime there is no time, and the soldiers have to pack the things quickly to move from one place to another. So people were looking for something which will seal quickly. Initially, scientists came out with uh, adhesive tapes which had a paper at the back. So you tear open the paper and then stick the tape for packing. But that also took time, because to remove a paper from the back of the tape was sometimes very time consuming. So adhesive tape as it is today, what we know as Scotch tape, I mean, a primitive Scotch tape was invented during Second World War, and this had no paper at the back. These used some polymers which were pressure sensitive polymers, like some acrylic acid esters were polymerized, and they were used as gum for these tapes. So without any water, just by pressing the tape, we are able to seal a box. And still the technology today, whatever Scotch tape or adhesive tape we are using, uses the same technology which was developed for World War II. Microwave oven, which is there in your mother's kitchen, can you believe it was developed because of another invention in Second World War? It was developed because of radar. Radar is something which can find out the position of enemies, aeroplanes, etc. And it uses some electromagnetic device which generates microwave radiations, and the microwaves hit in the air, find out they hit the aeroplane and come back, and they tell where the position of aeroplane, etc., etc. They are different power microwaves, but the basic device is same. And post-war, the same technology was used to make microwave ovens which are used for heating in the kitchen. That opened up a new area for chemistry. Chemical reactions started using microwave technology instead of normal heating on a heater or Bunsen burner. And the new chemistry reactions started getting published, where scientists started making certain reactions in a very short time span, in few seconds, and it became a new area or new, totally new frontier of chemistry, microwave reactions. So this is another impact on chemistry because of warfare. Camouflage. Right from H.G. Wells' novels, scientists and novelists have idea to hide something, to make something invisible. Several chemicals were invented for coating military vehicles, and purpose was to make the vehicles invisible. But nothing was really perfect. Even today, the research goes on. People have come to a certain success, but nobody has come to 100% success that you can make something totally invisible, or you can change the colors. So area of research diversified into camouflage technology, OLED technology. OLED is nothing but organic light emitting diode. These are organic chemicals or molecules, dye molecules, colorant molecules, where electricity passed at certain voltage and they emit colorants. So the same technology which was actually developed for war and military use is now used in your OLED TVs. You must, if you go to any Vijay sales or any shop, you will see Sony or LG selling OLED TVs, which are absolutely flat screen TVs and much better, much efficient than LED or LCD TVs, because they show the real colors. For example, if blue color has some 20 shades, OLED TV can show all 20 real shades, no distorted shade. Another advantage of OLED TV, it has not yet entered India, but outside in other countries, because it is not necessary that TV should be a flat, hard surface. TV can be like, like a chatai or wallpaper. You can just keep the TV rolled and carry it from one place to another. This has already come in the market. In India also very soon it will come. In Indian market also another invention has not yet come, which is already there in the world market. That is wallpapers based on OLED. Suppose in the morning you have very calm mood, then you switch on the pink OLED, you switch on say blue or green OLED, and the wallpaper is green or blue. In the afternoon, sun is very hot, shiny. You switch on the orange OLED and the wallpaper becomes orange. In the evening, you are in a romantic mood. You switch on the pink OLED and the wall becomes pink. So this is all because of the wartime inventions for military purpose. Also, a couple of years I saw Navaratri colors for saris. Same sari, every day you can change the color depending upon what is the daily color of that sari of the Navaratri. So this is how the wartime things can change the world. Now I'm coming to another chemistry application, that is rocket fuels. Use of rockets in war dates back to year 2064 or 1264 in China. From 1270 to 1280, Hassan al-Rahman from Asia has written a book on military war devices. He has listed 107 different chemical recipes for gunpowder, and 22 of these recipes are for rocket fuels. This clearly shows how advanced the warfare chemistry was in the 13th century in Asia. In late 18th century, Hyder Ali from Mysore used advanced rocket fuel technology. It was known as Mysorean technology. Later, British picked up that technology. And even there are historical, writings that small kingdoms in India, like I remember one very sad incident I read about the Indore kingdom, that the king didn't like one particular, he heard something bad about one of his minister. He heard that his minister was trying to overthrow him. So the king tied him to a rocket which was made in his own province, and the rocket was fired. The minister died. After few days, he realized that he was not a bad minister at all, and somebody had told something wrong. But nobody can reverse whatever happened in the history. World War One saw electrically steered rockets. World War Two had Germany had first guided rockets. Russia started first use of solid fuels for rockets, and that opened up the chemistry uh, area in rocket fuel technology. That gave a boost to boron chemistry. Today, the chemistry teachers may know that boron chemistry, a lot of research is going on, and that was fueled by the rocket fuel technology. Because in the 80s, American, today, if you want to apply for research grant, there are certain buzzwords. If you are working on some environment friendly, you get research grant. If you are working on something, related to national importance, you get research grant. Like that in early 80s, I remember when I was in US, there were two buzzwords. One was cancer research and another was rocket fuel research. If you do research, somehow connect your research to these two areas, you get a lot of funding. So boron chemistry was totally developed because of this rocket fuel need. Now I want to show other historically important non-chemistry inventions. I don't want to tell in details, but toothpaste and toothbrush became popular and they became household things because of Second World War. Because the Marines in Second World War used it for the first time. When they came back, they brought these things to the house and it became a house. Today we can't live. Again in year 2000, household women's and men's survey was taken. Thousands of them were surveyed in many countries, and they were asked which technology you think is the most important technology. Is it automobile or computers or blah blah blah, or toothpaste or toothbrush was also one of the option. And majority of the people voted that we feel without toothpaste and toothbrush we cannot live. We can live without car, we can live without computer, but toothpaste and toothbrush is a must. Computers started because of wars. The word computer is not a machine. First, the word was introduced just before Second World War. It was the ladies who used to do mathematical computation to find out the angle of gun or artillery, how at what angle it should be projected so that the ball will reach a particular destination. And this is how the word computer started. Then there were mechanical computers, then there were wall computers. And I don't want to enter into computer history because I'm talking mainly about chemistry. But computer was a wartime invention which was taken up further. Zips, we feel zips is a very negligible thing used for purses and shoes and pants and etc. But zip was most complicated machine that took more than 75 years to develop. And one of the initiative was because of wars, because the Marines used to wear buttons for their shoes. To remove the shoes, they had to unbutton it. And it was a tedious job. They wanted something quick. So zips were invented. Wi-Fi, the predecessor of Wi-Fi, was invented because of war. Internet, I already told you in the beginning. Jet engines, wristwatch was there, but became popular because of war. Because the Marines wanted to wear wristwatch so that they can look quickly what is the time. Plastic surgery because of wartime requirement. Scooter from aeroplane parts in France, scooters were developed, and motorcycle with sidecar was a German invention, substitute for car used in military. Now I am coming to my last slide, where I'm going to talk not about chemistry, but another very important thing about war. There was a person, he was the richest person in Switzerland, but became penniless, but he was the greatest human being. He could do something really robust for humankind. He achieved something which very few can achieve. He was extremely rich industrialist, a Swiss gentleman. He had a big industry in French Algeria, and he had a desire to expand that industry in Algeria. So he wanted to meet Napoleon. He went to see Napoleon, and Napoleon was not in Paris. Napoleon was busy at war front. He was fighting at a cross section of three nations, France, Italy, and Germany. And this rich industrialist went there to meet Napoleon. He actually witnessed a very deadly war in 1859. All three nationality soldiers were having a severe fight. Soil was full of blood and literally mud-like formation made up of human flesh, organs, and bloods. Thousands of soldiers were lying semi-unconscious, in pain, asking for water, and crying. That time there was no barrier between Italy, France, and Germany for those soldiers. They were only dying human beings. Nobody cared for them. They were just left there at the end of the day, and nobody worried about those soldiers. Asking for water, half of them dying. And this 29-year-old industrialist forgot why he had come. He had come to expand his industry, to make more money, to take more place in Algeria. But he forgot all about that. In the darkness of the night, he approached churches and schools in the town, went to the teachers, went to the principals who were sleeping, uh, brought volunteers to the spot, moved casualties to shelter, gave them water and first aid. Only words he was chanting were Tutti Fratelli in Italian, we are brothers. Everybody started chanting the same mantra, we are brothers, Tutti Fratelli. That entire night saved several hundred lives because of this rich industrialist and the humanitarian work he had undertaken. He didn't forget that incident. He started an organization. Organization grew. Over a period, it became an international organization, and it is known as Red Cross Society. The industrialist gentleman's name was Henry Dunant. He gave up his entire estate for his organization. Now he was not a rich industrialist. He realized value of humanity. He gave so much that he became penniless. The richest person started living on footpath with one set of clothes, ate only dry bread. People started forgetting him because he was a beggar now. Red Cross Society was flourishing. It played a major humanitarian role in all wars and all calamities since 1876, even till today. Red Cross Society got a Nobel Prize in 1901. Later on, they got two more Nobel Prizes till 1963. Second one during Second World War, and then 1963. Henry didn't get even a single penny from this Nobel Prize money. He donated the entire money to Red Cross Society. He remained a poor beggar. A rich industrialist voluntarily remained beggar, donated his entire money because he said, we are all human beings and we should live for human beings. I think this is one of the greatest lessons we learned from world wars or wars. And I think it is not only chemistry and science, but such humanitarian lessons also should be remembered. And that is why we should study history of wars. Thank you very much for listening to me with patience. I am very happy that you invited me, and thanks a lot to everyone.
It was very thrilling to hear you talk about all the inventions that came to being uh, because of the war. We are very inspired by one of your lines that you said, where, that no matter how much money we earn, how much successful you become, uh, until and unless you have the feeling that you have done something good for the society, your career is not successful. And it was very heart-wrenching to hear the story about the Red Cross Society as well. Thank you very much, sir, for giving us such an interesting talk. Now, if the audience has any question, I'm sure Dr. Tope would be pleased to answer them. The floor is now open for the question and answer session. If any one of you have any question, you may either type it in the chat box or raise your hand so that we can unmute you. So can we have a first question, please?
I think there is one question already in the chat box. Camouflage means changing of color, right? I think camouflage is used in terms of hiding the identity, whether it is by changing the color or by making it invisible, hiding the identity. Okay, there is another question has come. Sir, you talked about the invention of lacrimatory chemicals. What was it used for? Uh, Originally for war purpose, it was used to produce tears, to irritate the eyes, so that people eyes are irritated, so they run away from the place. That was the main purpose. Even today, riot police have tear gas shells. They fire tear gas shells to disperse the crowd when they are rioting, and that was the main purpose. But these chemicals, when the chemistry developed because of these synthesis, these chemicals are used for many other purposes, to manufacture many other chemicals, medicines and pesticides and whatnot.
Anybody else has any questions can put it down in the chat box. So we'll be very pleased to answer them.
Rahila, I think there are no more questions now. You can go ahead.
So it looks like we've covered all the queries. Thank you for answering the questions that were posed, sir. Dear participants, please spend a moment to fill up the feedback form, which is posted in the chat box by the end of the session. Now, I would like to call upon Maria and Bhagyashree to offer the official vote of thanks.
On behalf of Department of Chemistry and History of Sophia College, I would like to take this opportunity to thank RUSA for sponsoring the event. A sincere thank you to our principal, Dr. Sister Ananda Amrit Mahal, for giving us the opportunity to organize this event. We would also like to thank Dr. Prabodh Chobe for accepting our invitation and being with us today and for sharing your knowledge with us. He spoke about different innovations that occurred during the war, such as ammonia, polyethylene, penicillin, nylon, X-rays. He cleared our misunderstandings about polyethylene, and he also spoke about camouflage and rocket fuels. Last but not the least, thank you to all the live and interactive participants present here. Without you, this event would not have been possible. Thank you everyone and have a lovely day. Please make sure that you fill the feedback form in the chat box and then.
Thank you for taking the time to join us for this webinar. Have a great weekend, everyone. Stay home, stay safe.
Thank you.
All students, if you're finished filling the feedback form, you can leave. All the students can leave.
Sorry to interrupt, but there's a question in the chat box.
Yeah, I know Rochelle ma'am is
Yes,
asking.
ma'am.
Yeah. Rochelle, you can unmute and ask.
Is there any discovery from India during these wars? I think Indian military has had several discoveries which are related to war field. May not be internationally known, but locally there are many things which were done for military purposes. That's what I can say.